As a 40-plus year veteran of the corporate world and the former VP of HR at Microsoft, I've seen a lot of people successfully negotiate their job offer. Yet many people are reluctant to negotiate. They feel like the offer is a take-it-or-leave-it proposition. They should think again. Negotiations are common, and they don't have to be adversarial. And there's a lot to talk about beyond simply base pay. I'll get to all of those in a minute. But first, as with many things in the working world, it helps to look from the other side of the table. The most important thing to understand in the offer tussle is that by the time you see an offer, they want you. The hiring team has seen dozens or hundreds of resumes. They've interviewed several people, often for many hours each. They've discussed, even argued over the last couple of candidates, and they've decided on you. They are now invested in you. Just as you're thinking how cool it would be to have this job, they're thinking how great it will be to have someone in this role. And you should use that. When they present an offer, they don't expect you to just say, "Yep, sure," and sign it. No one does that. At the very least, people think about the offer. They discuss it with their family or their confidants. Make sure it's the right thing to do. Companies want you to do that, so you'll be all in when you do commit. Almost everyone says, "This is great, but..." And so begins a bit of negotiation. They expect it. In fact, the company has counted on that. They've made an offer a little lower than they expect to end up at, because they know there will be movement. So no, you're not insulting them by negotiating. That's what happens. The very best time to discuss your value to the company is at this moment, before they actually know you. Once you've been there, they've seen you in action. They'll have performance information, peer feedback, and results. They'll know your highs and your lows. Now, all they have is anticipation that's been building ever since you nailed the interviews. Your stock is never higher than it is at this moment. Use it. When most people think about negotiating a job offer, they often think about base pay, the salary, or the hourly rate. They think that's the place to negotiate. While there is probably a bit of room to negotiate the pay, again, it helps to think from the other side of the table. Companies are reluctant to negotiate here because base pay is forever. Pay is continuous for years on end, and it virtually never goes down, even if the business goes up or down. Pay is also the basis for future raises. If they agree to some larger number today, that only compounds into the future. That's why they have salary bands for most every job, numbers they need to fall into, numbers they use for many people. Setting you outside of that creates a fairness problem. You might have a little room to negotiate base pay. They probably lowballed you a little, anticipating your pushback. Perhaps if you're a real expert and they're offering you in the middle of the band, counter with something slightly higher, especially in the senior-most jobs where the pay bands are quite wide. But for most people, salary is not a great negotiating point. Maybe push back a little, but the deal-making will be hard. Don't be surprised if they're firm here. Fortunately, there are many other places to negotiate. Here are some ideas, though some may not apply in your situation. Signing bonus. The standard go-to negotiating point is the signing bonus. This change can be tough. Can you bridge the gap a little? Maybe request 10% of your annual base as a one-time payment right away. Companies like these because they're a one-time and not recurring cost. Guaranteed bonus. If the company does annual bonuses, push for a guaranteed first bonus, a given amount fixed right now but payable at bonus time. Again, this is a one-time cost to the company. Just be sure to track it to make sure it actually happens. Higher commissions. If you're in a commission-based role, negotiating that number is very akin to a salary number, often hard to argue. But perhaps you can push for different cliffs where the numbers change, or a performance bonus if you meet a certain target. Start date. Maybe you want to take some time to breathe between jobs, or they've put the start date out a month or more in the future. Ask for them to reconsider that date to something you'd prefer. Often there's more flexibility here than they let on, and it costs them almost nothing. More remote work. If you like working remotely and can excel at it, try advocating for more remote work, maybe fewer in-office days. This can be a fairness issue, but you'll never have more leverage to argue on this issue than right now. Better relocation. If relocation is part of the package, push there. Maybe full coverage and not just a stipend. Maybe extend temporary housing to allow more time to find a spot. Some companies will even use a service to buy your current house and relieve you of the burden of 2 mortgages. Spousal benefits. Not uncommon at all, especially with married couples, is to ask for some kind of job assistance for the partner. Perhaps resume assistance, job counseling, a headhunter, that kind of thing. Companies realize that this often helps to close the deal. More paid time off, PTO. If the company isn't already on the unlimited PTO train and vacation is important to you, try asking for more there. There is an equity issue with your peers, but it's worth a shot. Even with unlimited, it can be helpful to set expectations. I'm expecting to take 4 weeks off this year. Company equity. Speaking of equity, stock or stock options is a very common negotiating point, especially with more senior people. There is a whole world of options, pun intended, but this is a frequent deal point. You almost certainly can't change the vesting schedule, but the number is almost always negotiable. Healthcare. Outside the US, it's often fixed, but here it's a variable. Still, many think healthcare benefits are seen as a take-it-or-leave-it package. But if you have some extenuating circumstances, perhaps a family member with health challenges, see if there's room for more benefits. Companies, especially larger ones, often have some flexibility here. Creative compensation. With senior roles, you can often get creative in the compensation, perhaps agree to some incentive structure. If you're brought in to solve a specific problem, have a specific bonus if you solve that problem by some date. The options here are endless, and I've seen this with even mid-level roles. There are so many options for negotiations, there's almost no excuse not to. And again, now, before you start, is the best time to do it. If you're at all like me, negotiations are not fun. I'm more than a little conflict averse, and negotiations feel like torture. I try to remember something I once heard. If your counteroffer doesn't make you feel a little guilty, like you've gone a little too far, you haven't pushed enough. Remember, they'll come back somewhere in the middle, right where you both are happy. So negotiate that job offer and get what you deserve.